Hello, my name is Mark Hasselmann. I'm a sound designer from Denmark. This is a quick game audio project showcase where I'd like to run you through a shelved personal project which I dubbed Ping, which was a version of the classic arcade game Pong, but with gameplay synced to a gritty, minimal techno soundtrack. I worked on this personal project on and off for some time. I ran into some issues, I solved those issues, but ended up running out of time and scrapping the project for the time being. And I don't see myself returning to it anytime soon due to time constraints. So I want to just quickly show what I can from the project and talk about how this was fruitful, even though this didn't amount to any grand showcase or playable demo. There are always worthwhile lessons in incomplete projects and downright failures. I wanted to test out some implementation ideas and started to experiment with the idea of rhythmically synced Pong. I wanted to honor the simplicity of the game's feel and audio, which back then was nothing more than square wave beeps, while still making it a texturally interesting and engaging audio experience. So I combined my passion for game audio with my love for structurally and timbrally minimal techno music, such as that made by Mika Vainio and Il Perversain of Pansonic in the mid to late 90s, which combines the rhythmical structure of techno music with the cold, barren electronic sounds produced by function generators, synths, drum machines, samplers, and all reverb and delay units, which are all instruments and effects that I heavily use for my work, anyways. But why Pong? I was listening to the album Metri by Mika Vainio, which was the first release under his moniker Phase, and I've always loved the track Twin Bleeps, which basically sounds like a minimal techno version of a game of Pong.
Continue.
Two bleeps slowly drift in and out of sync. There's a very insisting kick drum and a few choice drones. It's wonderful stuff, it's highly recommended. If you for some reason are not familiar with Pong, the general idea is that it is a very mechanically and graphically simplified version of ping pong. Two players each control their own individual paddle. A ball is thrown, you hit the ball, return it to the opposing player, and if they are unable to return the ball, you get a point. First player to reach 8 points win, and a new level starts, and there is a total of 10 levels where each level introduces new elements to the music and audio elements, basically creating a unified and structured dynamic audio experience like a long single techno track that gradually morphs and transforms. I thought I could do the basic game mechanics in Unity quite quickly, but I was wrong. A mixture of rusty math skills and having to redesign it a couple of times, I ended up spending a bit too much time on it, and I can happily report that I got a bit too obsessive and started dreaming about Pong, and waking up in the morning with Pong-related thoughts. Since this project was made to test out certain implementation ideas, I chose to test this in Wise. The rhythmical sync of the game had to be tested out thoroughly and went through a number of iterations where each iteration had its own audio sync pitfalls, mostly related to the sync not being consistent or tight enough. I used some teaching slides from Jakob Schmidt, which he made for detailing some audio implementation tricks for both of the games 140 and Inside. In the end, I ended up using Wise music event cues as the rhythmical triggers. A blank music segment was created for each BPM section, and I placed 16 custom event cues to get a 16-step sequencer. I simply use a Wise callback function to trigger events when a new step has been received, and I use that as the basis for the audio timing in the game, which works fairly well. But I never got around to properly stress testing it, so there's most likely pitfalls I never got around to finding. The whole idea of ping is that the movement of the ball from paddle to paddle would be synced to the music, meaning I had to make sure the ball would arrive and collide with a player paddle on a musical subdivision. By calculating the individual lengths of the subdivision, the half note, the quarter notes, the 8 notes, and the 16 notes, I knew when the next step in the sequencer would be, and I used this time as a value for a linear interpolation between the ball's last position and its target position, which means the ball will reach its goal at the next subdivision of my choosing. This should also theoretically allow me to correct sync on a per subdivision basis if any drift should occur. This approach was not without its own set of issues, but ultimately this seemed like the most fitting in terms of approach, ease of use, and getting to test and showcase proficiency in Wise. But unfortunately, the reason I ended up scrapping the project and the reason I ultimately ran out of time was that I got bogged down into details over in-engine trigonometry. The calculations for moving the ball from position to position in a manner that I could rhythmically control in a somewhat stable fashion. just didn't work properly, and I used all the time I wanted to use an audio implementation on basically trying out too many different approaches using my limited set of math skills. If this had been anything other than just a personal solo effort, I would most likely have called in Unity programmer help from the people around me, but I chose not to, and in the end that meant I couldn't really sink any more time into it and progress was blocked. So that amounted to a few minor lessons in scoping out things correctly and realistically, knowing when you've reached your limits within a field and need to ask for help, not being too frustrated with a scrap project or a failure, and a lesson in soaking in the experience you get from these kind of personal projects. I couldn't showcase what I wanted in a meaningful way on the side of audio implementation, so what exists at this point is a worthwhile experience for me and this small video to document the tale. If you want to make a rhythmically synced version of Pong, I would love to help, as long as it means I don't have to do any trigonometry. Take care. Goodbye.